8-6, writing quadratic equations from roots and graphs. So what we've been doing is talking about quadratic equations, right? What is a quadratic equation? What do you mean? Okay, sorry.
Oh, ax 2.
Okay, so you're telling me the equation of it. What type of graph is it? A U. Thank you. Okay, it's a U. Parabola. Okay. So what we've been doing is we've been talking about these U-shaped graphs, and you guys have been finding the roots of them. And what's a root? X-intercept, right? Okay. What are the ways that I've taught you how to find the x-intercepts? You can graph it. Huh? Polynomial tools. So poly tools, graphing it, and good, Mason. What's that one you said? The X factor. Remember I showed you how to do it by hand using the X factor. So this is what we were doing by hand. Okay? You had to find the X factor. You did first number times last number on the top, middle number on the bottom, and then we found our two missing numbers in the table of the graphs. Remember this? Okay? Then you put them in your parentheses, right? And then we set each set of parentheses equal to 0 so that we could solve for x and find those x-intercepts. And we put them as ordered pairs. Do you guys remember doing this?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to work backwards. Okay, so now I'm going to give you these answers. Okay, I'm going to give you these answers and we're going to work backwards all the way up to this equation. So now I'm giving you the x-intercepts. I want to know what would the equation be of this quadratic function to have these x-intercepts. Okay, with me? Okay, so it says we already know that we can use the linear factors of a quadratic expression to find the solutions of a quadratic equation. So again, it gives you the equation. You would factor, x factor, to get the two sets of parentheses. And then we set each parentheses equal to 0 and solve. And get x by itself, right? Okay, so it says if a real number R, if a real number R is a solution, what's solution mean? X-intercept, good. If a real number R is a solution, oh, not an S, solution of a quadratic equation in standard form, then x minus r is a factor of a related quadratic function. So since each solution r corresponds to a 0 of the related quadratic function, you can use zeros to find the factors of the quadratic function. Okay, let's just go ahead and dive into this so I can explain it. Words don't make a lot of sense in math a lot of times. Okay, so let's just explain it how we know it. Example 1 says, the solutions of a quadratic equation are -2 and 8. What does solutions mean? X-intercepts. So -2 and 8 are what? They're the x-intercept. They're the roots. Okay, so it says the solutions of this quadratic equation are this and this. So it told me those x-intercepts. It says write the quadratic equation in factored form and standard form. Okay, factored form. What does that mean? If I factor something, what does my answer look like? Huh? Yeah, it's in what? It's in parentheses. So if we were to factor something, this right here would be my answer if I'm just factoring, right? But because I wanted my x-intercepts, I went ahead and solved. But when we did x factor and we learned, this right here was our answer for x factor. Okay, so today when we write this in factored form, it's going to be two sets of parentheses. So what I want you to do is I want you to write factored form. Factored form. Okay, and put your two sets of parentheses. And I'm going to explain how this works in just a second. Okay, when I do factored form, what do we start with in the first part? We do x and x. X and x. Okay. Now this is super important, so make sure you're listening to this part right here. This is the most important part. Since we're working backwards, okay, when I take this -2, and I'm going to put it in my parentheses, but before I put it in there, I have to change its sign. So if it's a -2 here, when I put it in my parentheses, it's got to become what? +2, okay? And it's the same thing for the 8. This is a +8, so when I put it in the parentheses, it's got to become opposite, which would be -8, okay? And that's my factored form. Okay, now let me talk about why we do the opposite, okay? Because, where's that paper? Okay, because, look right here. My answer is a -3 for my x-intercept. Does everybody see this? But when I work backwards, what is it in the parentheses? A positive. Right here, this is a -5. But when I work backwards, it becomes a +5 in the parentheses. Do y'all see that?
Yes.
Okay? Because when you solved it, you had to move it to the other side, and it becomes its opposite sign when you move it. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you're working backwards back from this to here. Okay, so we got to change the sign when we plug it in our parentheses. Do we do that when we do x factor? Do we change the sign going from the x to the parentheses? Not when you're doing x factor. Okay? It's only when it gives you the roots, and we got to go backwards to here. Okay, that's factored form. Now we're going to talk about standard form. All wrong. Standard form. Standard form. Standard is written right here, which I probably should have copied because I spelled it wrong. Okay, standard form. Who can tell me what standard form is? It's an equation. Okay, at the top, I want you to write it. So we're going to write standard form. And we're going to write this equation down. Standard form for quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so now my answer has to be in this form. So when we did factored form, we did 2 sets of parentheses for factoring. Now we're going to go from the factored form to standard form. Okay, so how am I going to take this and put it in standard form? Double distribute. Okay, so let's rewrite it. X plus 2 and x minus 8. Okay, and we're going to double distribute. Do you guys remember how to double distribute?
Yes.
Okay, it's important that you do the what? The arrows, right? Okay, I want you to draw your arrows. X times x is what?
X squared.
X squared. Then I have x times -8. -8x. Now what?
2 times x.
We're going to go underneath. 2 times x, positive 2x. 2 times -8, -16. Okay, is this standard form yet?
No.
No, what else do I have to do?
Combine.
Combine my like terms. What are my like terms?
-8 and 2.
-8x and positive 2x. Now, when I write this, does the order matter?
Yes.
Yes. What has to go first?
X2.
Highest exponent, x squared. Okay, then I'm going to combine -8 and 2, which is, good, -6x, and then the regular number last, -16. Okay, it is super important that you write it in the correct order. You have the x squared first. If it has a number with it, then it goes in front. So x squared first, then the regular x, and then no x on the back. Okay? So we have factored form and standard form. How was that?
Easy.
Okay? Scary?
Is that it or is there any catches?
That is it. No catch. Okay, number 2. It says the solutions of a quadratic equation are -6 and -1. What does solution mean? X-intercept. Okay. Write the quadratic equation in factored form and standard form. Okay, so factored and standard. All right, factored, what is that going to look like? The parentheses, so empty parentheses, that's factored form. What goes first in those? X and X. And then I got to do what to my roots? Flip the sign. Okay, so this is a -6, so when I write it, it's going to become +6, and a -1 becomes. Does everybody understand why we changed those? Why do we change those? Because I'm working backwards, right? It goes from a -3. Okay, and if I was to move this 3 back to the original side, it would become a +3 before I move it. Okay, make sense? Okay. All right, so now how do I go from factored to standard? Double distribute. So I'm going to rewrite the problem. I want it nice and neat. I'm going to rewrite it. And I'm going to double distribute. I'm not going to write in yellow. You probably can't see that. Okay. X times X is going to be? X squared. Make sure you're drawing your arrows one at a time and then the answer. X times 1 is?
1x.
Positive 1x. Do I have to write the 1? No, so I'm just going to write regular x. Okay, then I go underneath. 6 times x is?
6x.
6x. Positive 6x. Good. 6 times 1 is?
7x.
Multiply? 6.
Oh, 6.
Make sure you multiply. I'm glad you said that, Sai. I have a lot of people add these last two numbers for some reason. Okay, anytime you're double distributing, everything is multiply. Okay, I've had a lot of people adding on those. All right, are we done?
No.
No, now what?
Combine.
So regular x and 6x. What has to be written first?
X squared.
X squared gets brought down. What's 1 plus 6?
7x.
7x. And then regular 6 gets brought down in the back. Good.
You have to do that.
Yes, you do. Okay, flip it over. Okay, example 3. The solutions. What does solutions mean? X intercept. What's another word for solutions? Roots. What's another word for solutions? Zeros. And X intercept. Okay, the solutions of a quadratic equation are 3 and 4. Write the quadratic equation in factored form and standard form. Okay, so factored goes first. You have to do factored first. Okay, because you got to get them in the parentheses in order to double distribute, right? So you have to do factored form first, and then we can go into standard form. Okay, factored looks like, what's factored form look like? Parentheses. And what goes first in those? X and X. Okay, what do I have to do to these roots? Flip the sign. So positive 3 becomes minus 3. Positive 4 becomes minus 4. And that's my answer. Okay, how do I go from factored form to standard form? How do I go from factored form to standard form? Double distribute. Good. X minus 3 parentheses. X minus 4. Good job, y'all. You guys are getting it. Double distribute. Make sure you draw those arrows. X times X is?
X
X
squared.
squared. Make sure you put that little 2 on there. X times the -4.
-4.
Good. Then underneath, -3 times X.
-3.
Perfect. -3 times -4.
+12.
+12. Is this standard form?
No.
No. Good. Combine my like terms, which are what? -4. Perfect. Way to put the signs with it. Okay, what goes first? X squared always first. Then I'm going to add -4 and -3 and get?
-7x.
Good. And then the +12 gets brought down last. Okay. Example 4. Okay, example 4. Use the zeros. Wow, what does zeros mean?
X-intercept.
Good. Underline it. X-intercept. Oops. Okay, zeros, solutions, and roots all mean the same thing. So use the zeros of the function represented by the graph to write a quadratic function in factored and standard form. Okay, so now what's happening?
There's a graph.
There's a graph, right? There hasn't been a graph on the other ones. So the rest of the examples, I've told you, these are your x-intercepts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I telling you the exact number of these x-intercepts on this one? No. What am I making you do?
Find them.
I'm making you go to the graph and pull those x-intercepts out yourself. So here's my x-axis. What are my x-intercepts?
-1 and +2.
-1, right here is where it crosses the x-axis, so -1. And this would be a positive 2. Okay. Does anything else change?
No.
Are we going to do anything different now?
No.
No. Okay, so now I'm going to write factored and standard. All right, how does factored have to look? Factored has to be the parentheses like x factor. Okay, what goes first in those parentheses?
X.
X and x. This -1, what am I going to write in the parentheses?
+1.
Positive. That's the most important thing, is that you change those signs. What about +2?
-2.
-2, and that's factored form. How do I go from factored to standard? Double distribute. X plus 1, x minus 2. Okay, x times x is
X.
x squared. X times -2. -2x. Now what?
No. Do the 1.
Where? What do I do now?
Times the 1 by.
Okay, what is my pencil going to do?
Go underneath.
Go underneath.
Oh.
1 times x is 1x. Do I have to write the 1?
No.
No. 1 times -2.
-2.
Good. Now what do I do?
Combine.
Combine. What are my like terms?
2x and -2.
Not 2x.
Negative.
Negative. Okay. Sorry, I didn't hear you. Okay.
Peter.
What goes first?
X squared.
X squared. Then I have -2 and 1, which is
1x.
-1x. Do I have to write the 1?
Yeah. Well, no.
No. Do I have to write the negative?
Yes.
Yes. But I don't have to have the 1 on there. And then -2 gets brought down. Good. I'm glad. You guys are smart. That's why. Okay. Number 5. What do I do? Use the zeros. What does zeros mean? X-intercept. Kind of repetitive, huh? X-intercepts. Use the x-intercepts of the function represented by the graph to write a quadratic function in factored and standard form.
I know the numbers.
So first I need to know my x-intercepts, which are what?
-7 and -1.
Negative.
No, wait,
Eight.
8. Come on.
-8 and -1. Does it matter if I do -1 first and then -8? No. Okay, it doesn't matter which order you put the x-intercepts in. All right, so first we're going to do factored. And then we're going to do standard. Okay, factored. How does that have to look? Parentheses. And what goes first in your parentheses? X and x. -8 becomes?
+8.
+8. -1 becomes?
+1.
+1. Do you understand what I mean when I said you could put the 1 here and the 8 here? It doesn't matter. You should still get the same answer. Okay? So there's factored form. How do I go from factor to standard?
Double distribute. Double distribute.
Double distribute. Okay. X times X is
X squared.
X squared. X times 1.
Is 1.
Positive X, but I don't have to write the 1. Underneath, 8 times X. 8X. Good, positive. 8 times 1.
8.
Positive 8. Combine your like terms. X squared plus 9X, because 1 and 8 give me 9, plus 8. Are you speaking German at me?
Yeah.
You got it right?
Yep.
Good job. Any questions? How do you feel?
I feel great.
Feeling okay?
Yeah.
Good.
She's tired, so.
Okay. You're feeling great. I love that.